Okay, quick warning to the squeamish people out there. Maybe you don't want to watch this video, but for everybody else, look what I found this morning in the colony. We have 4 cold baby bunnies. I brought them inside to warm up. There was no nest built. I can't tell whose babies these are. I'll have to figure everything out from scratch when or if any of them wake up. Okay, so these baby bunnies have had ample chance to wake up, but they all seem to be truly dead. So now that all the babies are dead, my biggest question and concern is, who was the mom and why did she do such a bad job? Now, when you find random kits in the colony, speaking from personal experience in the past, it can be very difficult or sometimes impossible to tell who the mom is. Thankfully, I have somewhat strategically collected my group of rabbit breeders to be lots of different colors, partly so I can tell whose babies are whose and I don't get super mixed up. If, for example, I had a colony of all black rabbits, it would be very hard to tell who the mom was. But because we have so many different rabbits of different colors and different color patterns, I can more easily tell who the mom is, who the dad is, and who they're not. So after I found the babies, as I was waiting for them to warm up, I did some deducing and figured out who the mom and dad were. In the past, I've talked about how having so many spotted rabbits has caused us some issues, but in this case, it was super helpful. Kind of by accident, the majority of the does in this colony are spotted, but none of the babies were spotted. So that means we can rule out most of the does in this colony, because spotted does nearly all the time have at least some spotted babies. We can also rule out Sterling as the buck, because he's also spotted, so at least some of his babies would be likely to be spotted as well. So that left us with 3 options: Zsholtie, the chocolate and orange Japanese Harlequin Angora doe; Cattail, the solid chestnut meat rabbit doe; and our newest breeder, Edelweiss, the very young red-eye white New Zealand doe. So I picked up Edelweiss, flipped her over, and looked at her vent to see if there were any signs that she had just given birth. Now, rabbits are super clean animals, and oftentimes it's very difficult or impossible to tell if a doe has just given birth or not, because within a few hours they can clean themselves off so much that there's no way to tell. So I was hoping that the birth had been recent enough that whoever gave birth to these babies would still have some blood on her, or her vent would still be swollen from giving birth, or some sign would indicate that she had just given birth. But Edelweiss had nothing, so I grabbed Cattail, flipped her over, checked her vent, and she looked normal too. Then, feeling more and more desperate, I grabbed Zsholtie, flipped her over, checked her vent. Oh, and thankfully, her vent was very swollen and there was some mucus on it and stuff. She looked very much like she had just given birth, so I caught her in time and was able to tell. So I'm now 100% sure that Zsholtie was the mama of these babies. So that problem is now solved, but then that leads me to so many more problems. First of all, Zsholtie was just moved into the colony a couple weeks ago, so she could not have bred with Sterling in such short a time. So these babies aren't spotted, and she was pregnant before she was in the colony with Sterling. But Sterling, supposedly, is the only adult buck we have who's able to breed. Onyx, our old meat rabbit breeding buck, we had to cull because he was sterile, and I have given up on Sylvan, our Angora buck, as a breeder because he has randomly stopped breeding for a long time as well. But if Zsholtie's babies are too old to be fathered by Sterling, and before she was in the colony, she was housed with Sylvan, then logically, these were Sylvan's babies. So he's not sterile after all. So that should be super good news, right? Our buck isn't sterile and we can breed him with does. Except for that, we did breed him with does, and they didn't get pregnant. And Zsholtie has just now gotten pregnant in February when her last litter was in June. Now, rabbits go heat sterile, so it's understandable that in July and August and maybe even September she wouldn't get pregnant because the buck was sterile from the heat. But as it was cooling off in October, November, December, and January, that's 4 months that she could have been bred. So now I'm wondering why it took so long for Zsholtie to be bred, and why just 1 month earlier, in the beginning of January, when I bred Sylvan, who is not sterile obviously, to a bunch of our meat rabbit does, why didn't they get pregnant if Zsholtie got pregnant a month after? And honestly, I have not come up with a good answer for that. At this point, the most logical thing I can think is that for some reason, Sylvan's heat sterility just hung around for 4 extra months. But that seems kind of far-fetched and weird. So it could be his fault, or I hope it's not this, but it could just be that our meat rabbit does are weird and not getting pregnant anymore. All of the does in this colony, except for Constance and Edelweiss, are proven they've had kids before. So why are they all of a sudden not? I'm still trying to work this out because it's so strange. This has never happened to me like this before. I mean, like maybe one doe would have problems, but not like most of the whole colony. And this leads me to my next problem, which is, why is Zsholtie such a bad mom? After looking back at previous videos, I think this has been Zsholtie's 3rd litter. I think her first litter died as newborns, sometime maybe in the winter or spring of last year. I don't quite remember. But that's like their first time, and oftentimes rabbits have a hard first litter because they don't know what they're doing, but then all the litters after that are just fine, and that was the case with their second litter, except for that she gave birth in the middle of summer when it's super hot. So even though she was nursing them well and they were growing throughout the first week, all of them slowly were dying of heat stroke because it was way too hot, which is part of the reason why does don't breed in the summer and bucks go heat sterile, because these cold-hearted animals have a really hard time in the heat, and a lot of babies die in the summertime. So that was her second litter, so that technically failed too. But she was such a good mom then, so why was she so bad now? She didn't even build a nest or anything. She's had tons of opportunity to breed, and she didn't get pregnant for so long, and she's had experience being a bad mom, she's had experience being a good mom. This is her 3rd time, and she was a terrible mom. I mean, maybe moving into the colony threw her off, but it's been like, what, a week or 2? So it's not like she just moved in a couple days ago. She's had a lot of time to, adjust and get used to this. I don't know, she's just being really weird. So now I'm left with the question, do I keep her because she's being so bad? Is this 3 strikes and she's out? Or was her second litter a success on her part and just the weather caused it to fail? Do I keep her and try breeding her again, see what happens? Do I like the quality and color of her fur enough to keep her as a fiber animal? Do I keep her in the colony or move her back to a cage? These are all questions I'm mulling around in my mind. For a while it seemed like we had solved all our problems. The sterile buck mystery was behind us for a couple weeks, and we've had a working buck and working does having babies, and it's been great. But now we've been thrown yet another strange curveball. And that leads me to my 3rd question, which is, what do I do with Sylvan? Do I try breeding him again to some rabbits because he's not spotted? It's kind of too late for this round of pregnancies, but do I switch colony bucks again and have Sylvan back in? Ugh, I have all these new problems to figure out again. I just went through this whole process of having problems and fixing them, and they were all fixed and everything was fine, and now we have more problems. Why can't I just have a normal colony? Why can't I just have normal rabbits like I used to? Everything used to be so easy and nice and straightforward. But now it hasn't been for so long, and I'm so tired of all these problems. It's not even like normal rabbit problems, it's like weird rabbit problems, which I guess I get to share with you guys, and you can learn from my weird problems. So if y'all have weird problems, you can know what to do. But I wish I could just have normal stuff to like show you too. Okay, enough of my rambling. So moving forward, I'm going to re-evaluate my entire rabbitry once again and make some decisions. That might take a while though, so I'll tell you about those when I decide in a different video. For now, thanks for watching.